Welcome to another episode of Pilates Elephant. So great to have you with me. I am here with Jeff. Jeff, good to be with you.
Good to be here. Thank you for having me on the show, Raph.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to our convo. So can you briefly introduce yourself to the Pilates stratosphere?
I'm, as you probably picked up, Jeff, I run a couple of Pilates studios over in the UK, a couple of reformer Pilates studios called the Pilates Movement in the Surrey area, which is just south of London. I also have a HIIT studio up in London, which is on the complete opposite end. I came over here probably about 5 years ago and started in the HIIT world, teaching HIIT training, and then sort of migrated over to reformer Pilates. I've been in the industry for about 10 years now, probably more of a business perspective than a trainer. I used to have an ex-corporate background, came out of that about 10 years ago, a bit of a weird old way to come out of it. But I was a stay-at-home dad for about 4 years and started doing fitness as a hobby, and it evolved into running studios. So yeah, just corporate career, burnout, changed over to the fitness industry, which is quite a common story sometimes when you start to talk about people's backstories. It's people come into this industry in a few different ways, and that was mine. So yeah, so still going all right. UK is going well. So no, enjoying it.
Yeah, it is a pretty common story, and in the people that I train to be instructors, that is probably the most common story. Is people are starting a second career that is based around their passion and their values, and they've oftentimes done the work in the corporate sector that maybe at one time was inspiring to them, but it's for some reason or another, stopped being inspiring to them, or they realised they were no longer passionate about it, and so here we are following our dreams in Pilates.
Sometimes it doesn't always feel like that, but it can turn into a very, very stressful job. But yeah, no, you can try and make it into a vacation if you enjoy it.
Right. Well, that's what we're here to talk about. Is you've got two studios, and you're growing. And we got into a chat on Instagram, and so basically we're going to have a chat and see if we can come up with some solutions for you around growing your studios, and particularly the staffing aspect. So, set that up for us, and what would tell me what would you like to achieve from this conversation?
It's always good to hear someone's experience, and I think you touched on it at the start. Organic conversations ends up changing the thought process or the direction, and you can be having a certain conversation in your mind and go down a completely different path, and sometimes they're the best conversations to have. What I would always like to get out of conversation is any knowledge. I've learned that my way is not always the best way, and I did come into this industry very, very late, and most of the time my experience comes from getting your fingers burnt, trial and error. No, it's a tough old industry. So what I did think you did say was really, really good is about continuity of classes. And in reformer Pilates, it is a very hard thing to do, is create that level of continuity across your studio. And you've got a certain picture, or you've got an image, or you've got a dream of what you want to achieve. And it's not always easy to extrapolate that point across, particularly to team. We're all very creative in this industry. I think most reformer Pilates have invested very heavily in their education. Any instructors, so we're normally at the cream of the crop, I think, to a lot of extent. So yeah, I'd love to learn your views on how you get that kind of continuity across the studio, where I see people doing TV screens, that type of thing. I know there's a lot of that. Like with HIIT training, it's quite easy. We just write the classes. Here's the class. Here's what you're teaching. Trainers rock in 15 minutes before. They have a look on the wall. Okay, that's what I'm doing. It is quite straightforward. The timings are all there. They're given to you, where reformer Pilates, and I like to think, is one of the hardest things to possibly teach. Most of the time you can't demonstrate, or you're flapping your arms around, trying to wave around in the air, trying to demonstrate how to do this. So yeah, what your thoughts on that would be brilliant, or even how you'd start that initial step into creating that level of continuity.
Okay, so you've got a couple of studios, and how many instructors do you have working for you roughly?
Two studios. We're about to open another one, so we've just final stages completing on that. So we'll be 3 soon, and quite a few more beds in that. At the moment, I have 13 instructors working for me.
Congratulations. What a wonderful business you're building. So you're teaching, what, 80, 100 classes across the week, something like that, at those two
We
studios?
have 30 classes on roughly in each studio. So across the board, 60 classes. We also have PT studios in each. That's kind of the business model I'm aiming for. So we've got our main studio, Studio 1, we call it. And we've got Studio 2, which is a personal training studio. So quite a lot of PTs and then quite a lot of classes. So about 60 across the board.
Great. And you want to have more, we use the word continuity a few times. Do you want to have more, coherence between the different class styles? So, is it the goal that do you currently have like classes that are listed as kind of level 1 or intense or burn or, stretch and tone, or like, do you have particular class types, or is it just like Pilates with Raph and I just show up and teach whatever the heck I want to teach? Like,
Nah, 100%. So we've got 4 different classes. We've got Reformer Control, and that's our main kind of 80% stretching. This is kind of how I brief the team, how I want them run, and that's that dynamic, and that's the style we adhere to, is that dynamic Reformer Pilates. That's what's on trend. That's what's packing out the classes right now. So it is that dynamic flow we try and stipulate in the classes. So it's probably 20% stretching, 80%, workout. It is a workout. And how I brief that in the team, nothing too complicated, guys. If you're changing spring settings 6-7 times in a session, that's probably too much. Set it up, get your spring setting on there and run with it for about 20 minutes, 15 minutes. Do your pyramid where you go over, you'll do something on your left, you'll do something in the middle, then you go over to the other side. And that's how I try and stress how that class should be run to the team. That just seems to work. It's nice and simple. I don't go for complicated classes. I think I've listened to one of your podcasts before, and one point which really resonated with me, Raph, was that you said, the classes, the instructors that are packing them out are sometimes the ones that do the busiest, are the ones that, do the simplest classes. And I find that's very true. So we've got Reformer Burn, and that is a workout. If anybody asks me what that is, it's an aesthetic workout. And I've got a very strong PT background, and I try and use that PT background to know, the levers, what's working, what's going to get the Bernie bum or whatever, like what's going to get that aesthetic look. Not many exercises, hardly any, maybe 10 exercises. You're doing them for like 2 minutes. Think like skaters, scooters, all that kind of good stuff, lunges. The things that's really going to build muscle, get that strength element going. It's the kind of class where everyone's looking at you constantly, trying to stop. Are you going to start counting? Are you going to start counting? And that's kind of when you hit the nail on the head. So we've got there our 2 biggest performing classes. We've got a lengthen, which is just 55 minutes to stretch, very repetitive. You use up your bag of tricks pretty quickly when you teach a lengthen class a few times. There's only so much, but people like that. They just want to come in, they want to stretch. You do footwork, that kind of thing, mid back. And we have a challenge class. So we haven't rolled that out at the new studio. So that always takes a while to roll out. And that's when you start getting a bit crazy, when you're seeing all your Instagram moves and your snakes and your arabesques and your gymnasts and all that kind of cool stuff. It's not our most popular class. People who love it, you got your diehards in there, absolutely love it. It's probably the most, one of the funnest classes I teach, but it's not for everyone. So you couldn't build a business model around that. We did have jump and core, didn't really land. We ended up migrating out of that, the jump boards. We'll use the jump boards in the burn class. So yeah, that's it. So you got your Reformer Control, Reformer Burn, Reformer Lengthen, and Reformer Challenge.
Okay. And so what would you say is the gap between how you want it taught and how it's being taught currently? Magic wand, how would you like it to be compared to, where's the gap for you?
Well, I think it's more, I'm in a very tight-knit area, so people move between the studios. How I would like to, as we grow, symbolize what a Pilates movement class is. So when they go into a Pilates movement control class, they can go into any one of the studios. Look, I'm very fortunate. I've got an amazing team. My instructors are absolutely brilliant, very well educated, been in the industry for a long time. And I know when they step on the dance floor, they're always going to teach the best class of their abilities. They're just professionals to the highest standard. as I think a lot of instructors are in this industry, there is a point where I would like to create what a class is, and that's the control class and the burn class for us.
Mm-hmm. So you'd like to, because you mentioned a minute ago that you kind of do. It sounds like you do have some kind of a framework for how you want the class taught, right? So you want, no more than, well, you said 6 spring changes is too many, right? So presumably, you've got some number in mind that you would like. Okay, no more than 3 spring changes, or no more than 4 spring changes, or whatever number, right? And we could probably, you've want your pyramid taught, where you basically start out, and by that I'm assuming you mean you start out with some kind of easy version of the exercise, and you work up harder, until no one can do it, and then you go down again, and then you have to do the front. You do the front of the body, back of the body, the sides of the body. So you face the foot bar, you face the pulleys, you face the sides. Do the arms, do the legs. Bada bing, bada boom. Everyone's had a good workout, right? So, and there might be 1 or 2 other things that you would stipulate. It's like, okay, if you were to write your perfect class, right, that you would want your members to experience every time. Do you have you written that out?
Oh, look, the perfect class, Raph, from what I found is you start off on footwork, you do your mid-back, you work your core, you do your lunge, you do your forward, you do your back, and then you go back over the other side of your lunge. That is the class when I open the studio, that is the class I teach. So something within that remit, because that's the one everyone walks away from. It's simple. It's your core Pilates reformer class. It's the one everybody loves 100%.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Would you literally teach that same class? Again, this is perfect world magic wand scenario, right? So don't worry about what's possible. It's like, if you could wave a magic wand and have all your instructors teach literally what you just described. Start with footwork, go to lunges, do the front, do the back, step off the sides. Class is done. Do a bit of a stretch at the end, whatever, and then class is done. Is that what you would literally teach every class?
Not every time, no, because people. You do put a lot of pressure on yourself to always be different in the class, and you do need to have variety in there. Some people want variety, some people won't. And I know this is a complicated conversation. What I'm saying, it does get more complicated. That's your perfect class, the one you would open a studio with, but it's going to get very samey after a while as well. And you do need to bring in your cooler moves. Like, people do want to get a bit of mastery about it. But it still needs to be achievable for all, because you've got people from very different ends of the spectrum as well. And I think the reason why that class is so good to start with is none of it's overly complicated to teach. It's very simple. But you do want people to feel like they've got a level of progression as well.
So, all right. So here's what I would like to do with you. Like, if I was in your studio and I was your head trainer or something, we were working out, okay, how do we roll this out to the team? What I would suggest is, okay, well, let's just sit down and let's write out the perfect class, right? Now, like you said, the perfect class, it might not be the exact set of exercises, but I'm sure you could come up with, and I'm sure you could come up with this in a few minutes, Jeff, from what I've heard from you today already, is like, okay, you're going to work the legs, significantly, right? There's going to be some compound leg exercise in there that works the whole leg, like a lunge or a squat or a footwork or jump board work on heavy springs or a scooter. There's got to be some kind of compound leg movement. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And then there's probably other things that you'd want to have in there, like regardless of whether it's the first class or the 100th class, you'd probably want, okay, some arms in straps or some other form of ab work, right? There's got to be some, ab work, right? And then there's got to be whatever, right? And I don't want to tell you what the rules are because it's your business. You get to make the rules. But, does there have to be a forward bend and a backward bend? Or does there just have, do we just have to do a push and a pull? If I want to wow you as an instructor, right, and you say, show me your class, and I'm like, oh, here's the class I just taught you, oh, perfect class, dude. What would be in that class, And so could you make we don't need to make a list of those things right now on air, but could you make a list of those things?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And, like you said, no more than X number of spring changes, right? And, if it was me, I would say don't change no more than X number of equipment setting changes as well, right? And I would also add something like, okay, must face forwards and backwards at some point in the workout. So you work the front muscles and the back muscles, and there's probably got to be something in there about, from what you've said to me, okay, the intensity is important to you. You want people to build muscle and build strength. So you must get them to a point of near failure, right? For each muscle group at some point in the session, right? So you have to get to that, have to have sufficient load on there, whether that's adding enough springs or taking enough springs off, so that the clients get to that point where they're like, oh crap, I don't know if I can do another one here, right? Like you said, they're looking at you, waiting for you to start counting. So I think if you made a list of those things, right, and you turned that into a framework, right, and you say, okay, so there's no one exercise that you have to do, right, but you have to do a compound leg movement. And there's no one ab exercise that you have to do, but you have to do an ab exercise. And there's no one, and there has to be a balance of pushing and pulling, right? And you have to, whatever, like you just make up the rules, right? You get to make up the rules. Don't worry about my rules. But if you can write that down as a framework, right, and then test that out with your own classes and teach that out a few times and go, okay, if I teach this framework, did I really nail it? Is that really the perfect class that I want to teach? And after you teach it, I mean, you probably just plan it out in your head, and you've taught so many classes at this point, I imagine. But once you get really comfortable with that and you're like, okay, yeah, this is exactly how I would like my classes taught. And it's got to be like specific enough that, people are always going to be able to follow it. Like it's not so vague that I could go, oh, I taught this exercise is an ab exercise, and like, no, that doesn't work in my framework, sort of thing. So it has to be specific enough. Like, you might have to say, like, you need to bring all muscle, the following muscle groups to a point of near failure, abs, glutes, back, shoulders, like whatever, you need to specify whatever the things are. But it also needs to be broad enough that if I'm an instructor, I'm not limited to like, well, if I have done arms in straps the last 99 classes in a row, maybe I want to do long stretch today instead, and that still works, right? Because it's going to get the same result for the clients, presumably. If you're happy with that, then it's got to have enough leeway in it that I can have that creativity. But then that creativity for me as an instructor comes in within the framework, and your framework might say you always have to start with legs, okay? Or it might even say you always have to start with footwork, right? I mean, at KX here in Australia, they always start with a stretch of the foot in the thing, right? So there's no rule that says you can't do it the same all the time, but there's also no rule that says you have to do it the same all the time. So you can specify whether you want to start them with a certain thing or whatever. And remember, we're not rolling this out to the team yet. We're just writing a perfect fairy tale, scenario. So yeah, does that make sense to you?
100%. It's I think the key word there is framework. Like, I'll write my classes, my class plans, I'll do about 12 in a row. And I do that because then I can sort of visualize it, go, okay, I did that 3 workouts ago, or I did that 4 workouts ago. So you can call on all that knowledge and sort of step it in as and where you see fit. So I still, whilst I am going back to saying, there is that level of repetition, I am making it way, you might do footwork, but you might do it 10 different ways.
Right.
So you will start off with that little bit of variety. Still the same overarching goal. But yeah, by me being able to do those 10, but I think that eliminates that by saying the word, framework. It does make a lot of sense where, okay, you start with your legs or whatnot, work your way through, and then you can call on, okay, this is the exercises I know that fit within that remit. I'll call on them, I'll pop them in. Okay, I did that 2 or 3 back end. Because you do need to keep it fresh, but not weird as well. Like, I think, getting the breathing settings right is probably one of the hardest things when we start out with this, and making sure they're all. And I think the thing I always say to any of my team, jump into classes. That's the best way you learn as well. And that's how I'm always learning, is jumping into a class, getting on the bed, and then stealing as much as I possibly can from the instructors as well. So I think you're always learning, that spring setting didn't really land, that spring setting did land, is quite important. And then being able to build the framework within that spring setting you're saying is quite good. So no, absolutely amazing advice. So very, very appreciate that.
All right. So if you write your framework, right, and the framework would literally just be like a 1-page document that would say class framework, okay, and it'd say, okay, class, must include the following components, compound leg exercise, push, pull, forward bend, backward bend, whatever the things are, right? Must bring, in each of the following exercises, must get the clients to within 3 reps of failure. Or, like whatever the rules are, right? You make the rules, but you write them down there. And, no more than 4 spring changes, no more than 2 equipment changes or whatever the rules are. And then for each of those categories, arms, legs, abs, back, whatever you've put, you must include in there. I would suggest give a list of examples, like example exercises that fit in this category, right? So if you're talking about legs, it'd be like lunges, suggested spring setting, scooter, suggested spring setting, footwork, suggested spring setting, et cetera, right? And so it's not a rule, but it's like, here's an example, right? When I take compound leg exercise, I don't mean clams, right? I mean lunges on a light spring or scooter on a heavy spring, right? So and that kind of it doesn't mean people can't do things that aren't on the list, right? But what it means is, if you've got 5 examples of exercises and they're all like heavy compound movements, and then I come in with some kind of like point your toes, flex your toes on a light spring sort of thing, and it's like no one's going to get a burn on that. You're like, hey, dude, like that plainly doesn't match the other examples that I've provided here on the list. So it's not just completely up to interpretation of what you do. It's like it's got to match this set of exercises. So it doesn't have to be one of these, but it has to be similar enough that it's going to achieve the same result. So giving those examples, and so then once you've got that becomes your proprietary method. Here's the way we do things, here. And then it's just a matter of, how do you roll that out to the team?
Yeah, that's the hardest bit then, Raph, like, coming up with a way of doing it and then rolling it out, because, I guess up until now, my philosophy always is, if you're packing out the beds, I'm good. And, I try and give mentorship as much as I can as and when. But, that's the rolling out bit is hard. So, and I think we do fall into that trap. If we're making money, if the beds are packed out, why question it? Because at the end of the day, it is a business. It is there to make money. As much as we have the passion and the love for it, it is about putting beds, packing out beds. So I think coming up with methodology is good, excellent. It's the next one, rolling out to instructors. That's the tricky one.
It is. Well, are there instructors currently who are packing out classes who are teaching in a way that wouldn't match that framework? Like, if I go to a burn class at your studio, is there someone who's currently teaching those who are packing out their classes, but they're not really pushing people that hard?
Well, I find when with the burn class, and one of the one ethos I have on it, nothing really balance orientated. It shouldn't be the idea of the burn class. Anybody can step off into the studio and do that without really any prior experience. It's not meant to be a complicated class. You're not going to do legs in loops, really. Maybe if you put like a ring in between your heels and you start squeezing away and you get that inner thigh burn, that's always a good one. I'll start off with that one. But really, anybody should be able to walk into a reformer burn class, straight off the street, into a reformer burn class, no problems. And what I do find is some people still make it complicated, put in exercises which probably should be in a challenge class, and then it takes a while to coax in. No, it's still too hard. It's still too hard. It's meant to be hard, not that kind of hard. It's meant to be hard in a completely different way hard. And I think that's probably a bit of a challenge, is understanding 2 different philosophies on what hard should be in reformer Pilates.
Got it. All right. I think this is really going to help you. We use this distinction of hard because I agree with you. Hard is a very blunt word. It's a blunt instrument. It's easy to mean different things by it. And so we use a distinction between different ways you can make it hard of strength, range of motion, and control. And those are the 3 dimensions that you can make it hard in. And so something can be very hard in control, but very easy in strength, right? And so it can be like, quote, a hard exercise, but you're not going to get stronger from doing it, And that would be, standing one-handed on a Bosu, juggling 3 skittles and a live cat whilst balancing a freaking fitness circle on your nose or whatever. It's like, okay, that's hard, okay, but you're not going to get stronger from doing it. And so I think, introducing that concept, it's a very simple concept. I think pretty much everyone can grasp it straight away, of strength, range of motion, and control. And these are 3 dimensions. None of them is better or worse than the others. They're all good and important, and they all have their place. In the burn class, we focus on strength. Okay. In the what did you call the stretch class, the flexibility class, we focus on range of motion. Okay. And in the challenge class, we focus on a combination of all 3. Right. We integrate all 3 together, and we do the flying splits and the high bridges and all the rest of it. And so in the burn class, the challenge should be like 90% to strength, right? The range of motion and the control should be relatively small aspects of it. And in the flexibility class, it should be mostly range of motion that's being challenged, not control or strength so much. And so I think that introducing those concepts, right, and I think here's where, your leadership of the team is, I don't know if it'll be friction-free. I don't see why it has to be friction in it. But I think this is where you need to probably, by the sounds of things, change your relationship with the team. And, I don't know, but my sense is from what you say, the way you speak about it, is that you feel like you do have the right to sort of tell them how you want it done because you're the business owner. But on the other hand, it's kind of like, well, they're the experts in what they're doing, and so you don't want to tell them how to suck eggs. Have I misconstrued that?
Yes and no. Look, I'm confident in delivering. I've been managing trainers for a long, well over 5 years now, and I'm confident in delivering. That hell, I guess for me, it's time poor, and I think most small business owners, and it is starting to get a bigger business, is you are time poor. Like managing the team. Predominantly, I'll let my wife manage the team, in a lot of fairness, like rotors, who can cover, that type of thing, engaging. For me, being able to, it is, I'm teaching, I'm running the studio still up in London. That's taken up a lot of my time as well. That's more of a sales process, like sales, that takes up so much of my time. For me, it is time. It's coming down to going and jumping into classes, having these chats with people, getting offline. I'm either teaching at the studios. I still teach quite a lot. I do a lot of PTs, probably too much than what I have, and I need to start stepping off the floor more than what I am, and start being more the business. And you always see these phrase, being the business owner or being the operator. And sometimes I feel like I have essentially just given myself a very, very stressful job. And I think, that would probably resonate with a lot of people is getting off that floor and then focusing on the product more. And that's what I want to do, is be focusing on the strategy, the product, the marketing. And it's very hard to step away when there's such a direct cost to the business. So, yeah, there's definitely elements of what you're saying, but there's elements where it just comes down to me being so infinitely time poor. So if you can make it easy, in terms of just rolling that out and delivering it to people. But then again, it's never as straightforward. Oh, here, guys, here's a new template. This is how we're going to run the classes as well. And you don't want to suppress people either. So it is complicated in some ways, but that comes down to a lot to my time. Just trying to be a jack of all trades in so many different levels.
Got it. So, This is the entrepreneur's challenge, right? Is to let go of things, because when you start out as a solo operator, the reason you succeed is because you hustle and you're good and you care and you work hard and you do you're multi-skilled. You can sell and you can teach PT and you can teach group classes and you can do customer service and you can probably fix the website if it breaks and all of the things, right? And so that's what makes you successful as a solopreneur. But then as your business grows, the fact that you're still doing a lot of those things is actually what's holding you back from growing the business further, because now you need to focus on more high value tasks. And so and that process doesn't end. Like, it hasn't ended for me. Our business is doing about 4 million a year. And I know people are doing 10 times what I'm doing, and they're still in this process, right? The process doesn't end of stepping back from things and letting other people take over responsibility for those things. And, when you very first start out, like the first couple of people you hire, you probably hire people to take over the things you hate doing, like the books or the cleaning or the whatever. But, fairly soon you've given away most of the things you hate doing, and everything you do, you like doing, right? And now you need to hire people to do the things that you like doing. And maybe you like doing some things, but you're not that good at them, right? It's like, okay, I'm not bad at teaching group reformer, but there's someone over here who's a superstar who's actually even better than me. So even though I like doing it, I just can see I'm not the best at it. But then you give up the things that you're actually really good at, right? I'm really good at teaching courses, right? And so that was one of the last things that I'm giving up. I'm still not completely giving it up. I still teach the diploma here, but that was one of the last things that I gave up, because there are actually other things in my business that are more high value for me to do. And so I think in your business, from sound of things where you're at, just transitioning from 2 to 3 studios, you've got probably, you said 13 instructors. I'm guessing you have a few extra admin staff and whatever, so you've probably got like 15, 16 people, something like that, working for you.
Well, yeah, Colliers, I've got another 7 staff. So all in, I probably get about 20 staff collectively, and all the others in between. And I'm still teaching.
All right. And I think you probably should be still teaching, right, at that size of business, but probably not the PT sessions, right? I mean, if I just go through a mental list of the things that you said that you do, okay, sales, teaching group sessions, teaching PT sessions, leading the team. Okay, now your wife does a lot of them. What you said kind of sounds like management of the team, like covers and schedules and all of that stuff. But it sounds to me, and tell me if I'm wrong here, but it sounds to me like you're the one kind of setting the direction for the teaching. Did I get that correct? Yeah. So, if I think like, what are the things that are like the highest value tasks in your business, like the things that will either produce the highest amount of revenue, leveraged per hour that you spend, or the things that if you stuff it up is going to pose the greatest existential threat to your business, right? So, and I think, well, those things are plainly sales, right? That's the oxygen supply to the business, okay? And I think that's probably, if you're good at it, that's probably one of the last things you should give away to anyone, right? Because you're probably going to be the best person in the business at it, because number one, you're so passionate, and 2, you're invested. And number 2, it's actually a native skill of yours, right? If it is. And number 2 is leading the team, right? Because if you can improve the way these people teach by, 10 or 20%, right? That has a multiplied effect, right? They all teach 20% better, right? And that reaches hundreds, probably 1,000 clients, in a week, right? Or close to it. Whereas if you teach an amazing PT session, it's like, whoopee, 5 clients go away each week going, I had an amazing session with Jeff, right? Great for them, right? But the size of the impact you're making there is disproportionately small relative to the time that you're spending on those PT sessions. So how many PT sessions are you teaching a week?
No, probably about 10.
Okay, so if you took those 10 hours, right, and spent them, building your framework, have sitting in on like 5 classes a week, right, and then giving feedback to those trainers afterwards based on the framework. Hey, you did this, you didn't do this. Here's what I want you to do different next time. Here's what was awesome, right? If you did that like 5 times a week, like for say 3 months, right? And so every trainer gets like personal feedback from you at least once a week. You're doing 5 a week. You got 13 trainers, so you get to a trainer every like 2 times every 3 weeks, right? Your trainers will all go to the next level. Like even the ones that are already next level, they'll go to the level above, right? Because that feedback and that personal guidance is just, you can't substitute for it.
No, fair
What do you,
play.
what do you
No,
thoughts?
no, it is. It's just, yeah, you say it's like, oh, yeah, great. I think it's hard to roll it out as well. Like, I think what you said earlier, it's like what we would call the shit sandwich is, whenever you're delivering, and we know lights get criticism in this industry. It's always delivered with kick glass, isn't it? It's always a hard thing to deliver. It's just so personal, these sessions. You put so much into it. And I think if I was to struggle with anything, it is always feedback. And then I'm being lazy in the sense where, and I know I'm being lazy going, oh yeah, classes are booming, everyone's packing out, people are coming back. And you could automatically go into that thing, oh, if someone's not performing, all right, I'll see you later kind of thing. And I, sometimes I'll fall into the habit, all right, if someone's not performing, do I either spend time with them, get them up to speed? But then I'm so time poor. But yeah, it is, but you're right, what we call it the shit sandwich, where you've got good feedback. Here's what you're doing right. Here's what you're doing amazing. Here's some areas of improvement. And then, but I just want to finish, class is doing great. You obviously got a great vibe, blah, blah, blah. And that's how I would normally deliver that. But yeah, no, definitely all good points. And it does come down and I'll, I'll put off jobs. Sometimes I'm there cleaning the studio and I'm thinking, why am I doing this? And all I'm doing is thinking, I call it procrastinating. When I start cleaning and I start picking up something, I know I'm procrastinating because I just don't want to do the things that I know. Because there are some things which are a little bit uncomfortable. Sometimes picking up that phone to a difficult member, or some having those conversations on the phone are a little bit uncomfortable. You don't want to do, or you'd rather spend 2 hours mopping, sweeping, cleaning out the dunnies and pick up that phone. And it's just that productive procrastination. And sometimes you just got to slap yourself in the face and go, what are you doing? You should be beyond this point, but you still can't fall back into your own traps. So yeah, it is a complicated thing. You're right, and everything you're saying is right, and I know you're saying what you're saying is right, and then but yeah, it's delivery, and that's why coming out with a really good framework, what you said is important. And I am just trying to think 2, 3, 4, 5 studios down the track where I can just sort of start to switch off a little bit, roll this out, and know it's a success. It's product now, and that's what I want to be focusing on, the product just being absolutely bang on and not varying. People go from one studio, I'm like, oh, I love this teacher, and and people get their followings, and that's one thing I do worry about. Instructors get their followings. If that instructor leaves, we lose members because of that, because they're following that instructor's style of teaching. Or they go to another studio, then, quarter of your business ups and leaves because they want to follow that instructor to the other studio. And they're all things which I think are in the back of studio owners' minds as well, where there is that worry as well. So the better the product is, and the more the product is the Pilates movement product, or at your studio, whatever studio product, I think it does become more and more important where people stay because of your signature or your core class. So yeah.
Right. And that is a real risk, I mean, it's undeniable that clients become attached to their instructors. And even if all of the instructors are teaching the same style, they all still have their own personalities, and clients are going to connect and become attached to a particular instructor for sure. Otherwise we could just have them do a DVD or stream it, over the internet. And people come in because they want that personal touch and that relationship. So for sure, that's a risk. And I don't know if there's a perfect way to mitigate that risk, but I think having the team as coherent as possible and having a very consistent product, so that, okay, if I know that, Mary's not going to be there today, and I love Mary's classes, but if I go to John's class and he teaches just as good as Mary, even though his jokes aren't quite as funny, it's still, I think that does mitigate that to a certain extent, although I don't think you can ever completely, eliminate that risk of an instructor leaving. But I think paradoxically, there are a few reasons instructors leave studios, but I think the two, big ones are they're not growing, okay, or they're stifled. Right. And I think studio owners often get it wrong at both ends of the spectrum. And so, I've known some people work in different Pilates franchises and have left those franchises because there were such rigid rules about how you could do everything. They felt they had to be like a robot. the specific cues they had to use and the specific sequence they had to teach the class in, and where they had to stand in the room when they said certain things and which music they were allowed to play. It was all like very, very, very prescribed. And they just found after a couple of years, it's like, I'm not growing here anymore. I'm not learning anything. I'm just literally going through the same motions over and over. And if I want to grow as an instructor, I have to go elsewhere to do that. So that's one way to lose good people, is to be too prescriptive. And that's why I suggest a framework rather than a recipe, right? Because people can grow within a framework, right? The other end, though, is where people get no guidance, no feedback, and they feel like they're not growing because they don't know if they're doing a good job or what they need to do to improve, right? So here's the thing about A players is A players want to be A players. Like, they want to perform. They want to be the best, and like you said, most people in this industry are like that. We've spent, tens of thousands of dollars on our certifications and, studying for years and all the rest of it because we want to be the best we can possibly be. And that doesn't stop when we get into a workplace, right? We want, I can tell you, like, for a certainty that all of your top instructors will be grateful for feedback, right? As long as you deliver it in a kind-hearted way, and in a constructive way that is, plainly there to help them improve, not just, you telling them off or something, that people relish it. And I've been through the exact same, situation that you're in, where when I was a studio owner, I sort of like had the exact same thing. I've got all these great instructors, they're all teaching different styles. I wanted them to teach more in the same style. And I felt like, well, who am I to tell these people? And actually, universally, I found once I started doing that and giving people feedback, the instructors were like, oh, this is so great. I wish you'd done this 2 years ago. This was so awesome. Thanks so much for this feedback. I didn't know how I could improve. I was getting really stale. It was like, yeah. So people, I think, you'll be surprised by how much they'll actually be grateful for the feedback. But I think the change management process, it is a process, right? And like you say, you can't just give them a sheet and go, here's a framework, go teach it, right? Yeah, you're going to have to, get your framework together, have a team meeting, okay? Teach them a class based on the framework, right? And go, hey, did you like that class? And if anyone goes, no, that was a shit class, then go, okay, well, you're probably not going to be a good fit, okay? But chances are they're all going to go, that was an awesome class, right? And you're going to say, okay, great, I'm going to show you how to teach that class, right? Here's the framework, right? And here's what I've put together. And I've been around to all of your classes and I've checked out what all of you do when you do your best classes. This is what you were doing, right? And so this is what I've put together, and this is what I want us all to do now, right? So let's talk about how to do this, right? Let's get down on the machines and let's just practice. Okay, what does a compound leg exercise look like? What does working the abs look like? What does doing a pull exercise look like? What does blah, 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 how do we figure out how to not change the springs for 6 exercises in a row, sort of thing? How do we program that? So you actually go through it with them, and then just, ask, do you have any questions? Do you have any questions? Does that make sense? Do you guys want to teach it to each other? Okay, what would you teach here? What would you teach here? Etc. And then just say, hey, here's a copy of the framework for you all. Okay, I'm going to be coming in and sitting in on your classes over the next couple of months, and I'm going to give you feedback, okay, to help you get better at this. Now, my feedback is what I just said, is to help you get better, right? Because I want you to get better, I want me to get better, and I want you to give me feedback as well, right? And then just, you tell them you're going to do it, then you just do it.
Hang on, yeah, right.
And they will thank you, I promise you.
Yeah. No, I get it. And look, I know so much of that needs to be done, and you're getting all these businesses over here, and I guess it's a reflection. The UK is a different market as well than Australia. Like Australia, I went to Australia, and it is so streamlined in Australia. Like everything, you go to studios, everything's so streamlined. The studios that I did visit, and there's so many little independents over here, and we're all just trying to get through and figure it out. We're not up in London, and it is going in a different direction now as well. Like definitely going in a different direction, and you got to sort of prep for that too. Like it's fast growing over here, it's evolving over here, and it is which direction it goes in. It's yeah, it's going to be interesting over the next few years to see where it goes. So leveling up is really, the base. I think anything we've just discussed is just leveling up the studio, getting it prepared, getting it ready to be one of the best brands as well. Like that's quite important for me, like creating a brand and the product is the brand, not just the logo you see. I'm all about the brand, but that's really important and creating that. And I think control, the one that's going to be the signature one as well. So yeah, no.
Great. Well, right out of control framework.
I think yeah, no, all good points for us. Thank you.
Right out of control framework, right out of burn framework, right out. What was the flexibility class called again?
Oh, lengthen's just, we do that 2-3 times a week. We get a few people love it. You're just recycling every single stretch. Like it's hard work as an instructor sometimes because people just want to be stretched. There's a little bit of footwork in there, get them lengthened out. The most part is you use up your bag of tricks pretty quickly. And that's exactly the thing. It took me a while to come to terms with on that. Sometimes you put so much pressure on yourself as an instructor to make it different and exciting and wild and, research all these moves. But people just in that class, they just want to be stretched. I don't care if they're doing the same thing because they're doing what they're not going to do at home because they'll come in, they'll book in, and they know they've got no distractions. They're just going to do what the doctor, the physio, whatever's telling them what they should be doing because they can't touch their toes, they can't reach behind their back. Their mobility is an issue. So it's just locking them in a room and doing probably what they don't want to do for an hour.
Right.
That's an easy one. Lengthens is no... I have had instructors struggle with that one though, as well. Like instructors that are not really landing, and I'm just sort of in the going, oh, what do I do? No, just go stretch. Don't make it too hard for yourself. Don't make it hard for yourself. And I think we all have a tendency to do this. Sometimes we do make things hard for ourselves in this industry when it just doesn't need to be. It can be, simple is good. And you see so many things, and I do see studios over here, not just reformer, lots of different things, and they try and be all things to everybody. And there's that rule in retail is you just do one thing and do it really, really well. And that's what I'm trying to do is just do one thing. We do reformer. We've got a few little things within that remit, but outside of that, if I start rolling out mat Pilates and I'm competing with the gyms down the road and the leisure centres and the people who've been doing it in the village halls for 10 years and what have you. So yeah, I just want to do one thing and do it absolutely astoundingly well.
And where does the PT fit into the business model? What does that add to the business model?
Well, it's a good chunk of revenue, but we get asked so much for PT. When we first started out, we weren't even clocking PT. The studio that we had by chance, we were all just about putting in a studio. They were all the business models we were looking at. Like we were trying to, we've done all different reformer studios and looking at them online. And most of the time it was just one studio. That was your thing, 10 beds, whatever. And then by chance we had this extra room. We put in a terrible reformer. So I wasn't training enough on reformers and put in a reformer in there. We put a barrel in there, put in a wonder chair. Just a nice space, really. It was nice big open windows. So we thought we'd turn it into a PT studio, and PT just became a massive part of the business. And it was a nice one of padding out a trainer's shift. So a trainer comes in and they do 2 classes, and that's a good thing for trainers as well. They don't want to, you can give them 3 classes or 2 classes and a PT. It's a good earner because a lot of instructors, they'll go out and they'll just do 1 class and it might be paid well, but they got to get there 15 minutes before, they got to pack up, they've got to spend 20 minutes getting there. It ends up being like 2.5 hour kind of gig. So we can give instructors 2-3 classes and a PT. It starts to become quite lucrative for them as well. And you want your instructors to earn good money from you because they buy into the business. If they're only earning like £100 a month from you, it's not that important for you as a job, for them as a job. So you've got to make sure they're earning, they're looked after, and it's a good part of their income, a good chunk of their income. So anyway, when we first started off, our PT just went through the roof. We were just getting so many people. So many people didn't know what reformer Pilates were. Reported Pilates was. So coming in, or can we just do 1 or 2 sessions? They want to come in, they do a session before they see the machines, they're intimidated. next thing you know, well, why don't we do 5 sessions with you? Why don't we do 10 sessions with you? Or do you think so? I've got one instructor. She's brilliant. She'll just, no, you can't go into a class. You're going to do 5, 10 sessions with me. Oh, okay. Yeah, no worries. And, so it just became a massive part of the business. So it's probably 20%, 15, 20% of our revenue. And we're always getting requests, prenatal, people come into it a little bit later. They want to do prenatal PTs. Loads of people with mobility issues can't go into a class. I'll just do PTs. We do duet PTs. So it ended up just being a massive chunk of the business, which was initially never on our radar. We just wanted to do a studio. That was it. And yeah, there you go. You're always surprised how these things evolve.
What do you think would be the impact on the business if you spent all of your time divided between selling, training the trainers in how to teach and auditing their classes and giving them feedback, and training the trainers in how to sell, like this woman who says you've got to do 10 sessions with me before you can do a class? What would be the impact on the business?
Sorry,
What would be the impact on the business, do you think?
Oh, it'd be great. Yeah, no, it would be fantastic. Like, selling is a hard one though, Raph. Like, getting instructors to sell is always, it's not a dirty word, but a lot of people just don't embrace it. They don't, and you don't have to be salesy. You can just be subtle about it. And look, I'm a salesman through and through. I've been doing sales for years. I've been selling gym memberships. I embrace sales and all that comes, but it's also a direct impact for me, sales. So obviously I'm going to embrace it a lot more, but I don't mind it. I enjoy it. I have no problem telling people that's anybody. I think anybody in this industry is in some way, shape or form doing sales. Even by bringing people back to their classes, there's those little chats at the end, the little chats at the beginning. It's getting people to buy into them. And that is what sales is. And, it's getting someone to want to spend an hour with you, and you can have all the knowledge in the world. And if someone doesn't want to spend an hour with you, they're not going to put over their hard-earned cash. So in convincing someone that they want to spend an hour with you is in any term sales. But yeah, getting my team to sell, mainly, it's not necessary so much at the studios. We're doing well. So we probably, we're not doing that hard sell like at the HIT studio. That is sales culture through and through. That is selling gym memberships. We are surrounded by competition. We are selling. And we're on the phone, selling on the phone, needs analysis, all that type of stuff, getting down and half an hour sales phone calls with people. But they're buying a high ticket item. But I think it's the subtle sales, which would be at the back end of PTs. But then it gets to the point as well, people have to be able to do the PTs too, which is tricky. But I say it when I speak to my instructors. I'm just at the end, one thing I'll say to them, you do a one-off PT, and that's what we do a lot of. We do like a one-off PT, just get them ready for the game day, so to speak, just get them ready for the thing. Oh, can we get you booked in for another PT session? Very, very simple, and that's what I say to the instructors. Just say that at the end of the PT session. Can we get you booked in for another session before you go in? And you'd be surprised how often just that simple line, okay, no worries. If you need anything else, let me know. No, you don't, that's what I say. Can we get you booked in for another session before you go into the studio? And just those few words, that's what sales is, I think, and getting people to do it. The application is harder, is getting people, oh, no, I forgot to say it, whatever. But yeah, getting those kind of things, always give that feedback to the team.
Right. Well, and if you can frame it if you can sell it to the team, as in like the benefit to them is, well, if you can sell this person 10 extra PT sessions, this is the benefit to you as the trainer. And here's the words you can say. It's really simple and easy, like you just explained it to me. I think, so if you were to spend your time on that, so I'm not talking about, getting your trainers on the phone, selling, year contract memberships, but just saying, hey, I think before you go into group class, I think you should do another 5 of these one-on-one sessions with me so we can get you ready, or, basically whatever this woman says that's working so well. turn that into a script, right?
She's personality through and through. Like, my God, so there's not many people that could pull it off, but she's one that can pull it off. But yeah, I remember I went to a PT session once. I took over. She was away on holidays, and she said, "Oh no." She's saying, "No, we can't go into sessions yet." She's told us we can't. I'm like, okay.
Well, I think, I imagine you'll agree with me that, my view is sales is coaching, right? And you're coaching the person to take the steps that are in their own best interest. And, often people, feel ambivalent about taking the step. They're feeling anxious about, moving forwards with something. But, deep in their heart, they know this is something they need to do, but they're afraid, they're putting it off. And so when you take that leadership role in the sales conversation, you basically say, hey, look, you told me you want to achieve X. Well, here's how to achieve it, right? Are you ready to achieve it, or are you going to have this conversation again in 12 more months, And so, it sounds like that's what this instructor of yours is doing, is she's taking leadership with those clients and telling them what they need to do in order to achieve their results, right? And they believe her because it sounds like she's believable and she's trustworthy, right? So I think all of your instructors, I would imagine should have, maybe they're not as gregarious as this person, but they must have, if they're popular instructors, they must have a level of trust from their clients, right? The clients must trust the instructors, otherwise they wouldn't keep coming back to them. So I think you don't have to do it in the same way that this woman does it, but I think all of those instructors will have an immense influence over those clients. And just a few casual words at the end of the session, like you say, hey, let's get you booked in for another session. Let's get you booked in for the next 6 weeks because my schedule's filling up and I'm not sure if I'll be able to fit you in otherwise. Right? Bam, there's a 6-pack sold instead of 0. And multiply that times 13 trainers times how many sessions you're doing a week. That turns into quite a significant amount. Right.
Yeah. Well, less is more in sales. It is. It's the timing which is a struggle as well. I think, the next step is, my next thing is to hire a manager, and they don't even teach. And this is probably framework not rolled out, and then they take on all the PTs, because what we are finding is PTs we are very limited to bolting them on at the end of a class, beginning of a class, fitting in with instructors. Instructors don't want to come out just for one PT. Unless we can start scheduling 2. See, the diaries are very, very difficult. So, and that's what I'll also stress the point as well. If the instructor can set up the PT when they're there, it makes it a lot easier for us, because the next thing you know, you just get this whole email tennis game going between, my wife and myself, and we're setting up the instructor. Can you do this time? The instructor goes back, they can do this time. And then you can just be bang. You got 2 people within a room, their diaries are out in front of them. Can we do this time? Can we do that time? It just becomes so much easier as well. So it's not even just sales, it's just monitoring the diaries. And that is...
Well, that's an easy solution. You just need a calendar booking app, like whatever you use, MindBody Online or Schedule It or Acuity or whatever you use to book your sessions. You just need instructors to create availability before or after those sessions for one-on-one for PT sessions. And that way there is no ping pong with the emails. It's just like, oh, would you like to schedule it on Thursday after class? Oh, Mary's free then. Great, I'll book you with Mary, right? And so you just automate the scheduling of it. That's easy peasy.
We did have that. We had software called Glowfox. So we had a software that did do that. So we had all our instructors up on our website, and then their timetable was bookable on the website, which is brilliant. We could just say, okay, guys, we're going to put your slots in, whatever. So a member could come along, and then for whatever reason, so a member could come along, put in whatever, they could see what their favourite instructor could be booked into, and then they got it, and then they just removed it. Glowfox removed it. So that was about 3 or 4 months ago. Sent our whole system and the whole basis of our business model into disrepair, and now we're doing it old school way. But yeah, we probably could get them to manipulate on the system. That's not a bad shout, actually, getting them to manipulate it on the system.
Just send them a booking link, or book them in over the phone. Either way.
Yeah. And if I was to add any value as well to anyone selling or anybody out there who's listing for sales, and I did say that earlier, less is more. And when I've seen people, the amount of times I've seen people just talk themselves out of the sale Happens a lot in my HIIT studio, and then they'll be there, and they'll have someone, they'll do a session with them, oh yeah, what'd you think, da da da. And then you just start talking about how amazing the studio is. We've got this timetable, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And then you see these people's eyes start to gloss over because they just want to get out the door because they've got a life outside of the studio. And if anybody's selling, less is more. Just the most successful people I've ever seen in sales, particularly at my other studio, have gone in there at the end. What'd you think? Yeah, good, righto, should we get you signed up? And that's it. And that's all it needs to be is, you could go in, they've just had a session. They've drunk the Kool-Aid. If they're liking the Kool-Aid, if they're liking what they've just done, anything you say by that point is irrelevant. If you start going on, oh, we'll get you this, we'll get you that. You've had your hour with them to put all that information over. You don't put that information at the end. You just get in at the end and go, all right, should we get you signed up? Bang. And that's all it needs to be. So you don't have to go and think and study a big level of sales and go through this whole divergence of sales. It's very, very simple. It really is. But yeah, I like that. I'm going to manipulate my calendar a little bit.
I think that's great.
That is thinking, Raph. Sometimes you just, you can't see the woods for the trees, can't you?
No, you can't. And I mean, I still struggle with that as well. But I think the thing that will help you is getting out of those PT sessions and possibly any other low value tasks you do, like cleaning the toilets at the studio or whatever. Although
I don't often do that. Yeah.
Having said that, I mean, I sometimes have some of my best ideas when I'm doing the ironing or, whatever, vacuuming the floor. But I think, no, that is such great advice about sales. And I agree, like actually the highest converting person on our enrollments team consistently has the shortest calls. She's on the phone for the least time. And she has the highest conversions. And she basically she doesn't oversell it. She just says, all right, you ready to get going? Okay, great. How would you like to pay?
Yeah. That's the key question as well. You've just got to assume. You've just got to, you've got to assume that they're paying. And the Brits are different as well. Like we don't like over here to in Australia, it's a little bit easier to sell. Like over here, we're a little bit more standoffish with parting of our money as well. So there is a little bit more, you just kind of got to cold cock someone, bang. Oh, right. Next thing you know, 5 minutes later, they put down the phone. What happened then? It needs to be an element of that. And you've got to have that. You're not selling crack cocaine. You're selling someone a better, healthier lifestyle. Like you can never lose sight of that as well. You're not tricking into, it's a brick and mortar business. You're never tricking anyone into anything too. So it is a nice basis to do. And then you've got things here. It's getting more sales over here as well, like, teacher training and all that. Everyone's hiring sales reps now there is a lot more growth. There's a lot more demand. So people are upskilling in sales. So, yeah.
All right. Well, I think to round up, my advice to you, Jeff, is sit down at the kitchen table when the house is quiet. Write out a list of all of your things that you do on a weekly basis in the business, and put $1 per hour value next to each of them.
Yeah.
Right? Or £1 per hour. So those PT sessions, what do you charge? Like £50, £60, £80, something like that per hour, right? Whereas if you spent an hour, training the reformer team, right, multiply that by how many classes they teach over the week, how many clients they're going to influence. So that's got to be a much higher, dollar. If you can increase your class attendance by like 3%, okay, by improving their skills, right, that's got to be more than £80 a week, in value, right? So you can attempt to put a rough kind of sorter, just to how many zeros in it, value next to each of those activities. But I think that you'll find that probably the two highest leverage activities that you can do in your business right now are selling and training and leading those team of reformer instructors.
Yeah, no, I get it. And I mean, it is hard. And when you first come into this and when you start working for yourself, I always had a salary job, a good job, but always a salary job. You do have to put a value on your own time as well. And that's a lot, I think, as a business owner, you do stop valuing your time and what it can be spent doing. And then you think, oh, God, I'll just do it myself. And it is about hiring people, and it's hard over here at the moment as well. There's a massive labour shortage. Like it's I don't know what it's like over there in Australia, but it is tougher over here. It's tough finding, not just instructors, any kind of additional resource through labour. It is quite tough, and there's a massive shortage as well of reformer instructors too. Like I'll put a job advert in, I'm not getting like 10, 20 CVs come back by no stretch, particularly out in Surrey, maybe up in London, but there's a lot of scope there. But no, you're definitely right, Raph. It is valuing your time, and sometimes you don't value your time as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is valuing your time. I agree, but I think it's not so much. I don't mean it in the sense of like you're worth more than that. Like it's beneath you in some way to teach those one-on-ones or to clean the toilets. I don't think that's beneath you. But what I mean is, it's like I think you could spend that hour in a way that would give you and the business a much greater return.
No, I get it. It's where your time could be better spent elsewhere, and it is that. Oh, you like marketing. Getting your social media as well. Like getting that on point is very important for the business, because that's your little business card as well. That's what people look at now. Your Facebook account, your Instagram account. They want to have a sneak peek at what you're about before you even enter in the studio. So those type of things, having them on point is very important. As much as I don't embrace it as much as I should, but
well, I think go with your strengths, and you're good at sales, and you're good at teaching classes, and you know what you want in that studio. So I think if I were you, I would be giving up, those PT clients and handing them off to other instructors first thing Monday morning, and I would be spending that time training the team, like do a weekly team meeting. If you can't manage to get everyone together every week, do it once a month and make it mandatory for everyone to show up, and do it on a day when no one's working, like do it on a Sunday or a Saturday or whatever day, and just pay them for it and say, look, you have to be here, give them notice, like 2-3 weeks advance warning that it's going to be on. So I'm going to pay you for it. I'll buy you some sandwiches and a cup of tea, and we'll have a great class, but you're required to be there. And then roll out your session plan, teach them a class, get them engaged, ask them what they think, ask them if they can make it, if they think they could make it better. Maybe they'll have some input that will be better than, or maybe they won't. And you don't have to take on board any of their input. Everyone gets a voice but not a vote. And you can just go, okay, yeah, no, I like mine better. And roll it out and just say, hey, I'm going to be coming around and giving you feedback on your classes, and it's because I love you and I want you to be better. And I want me to be better. I want our business to be better. And I want us to be better as a team. And I want you to give me feedback if there's anything I can do or not do that will make your job easier. I want to know about that as well. And just start giving them feedback and make it like I think the shit sandwich works okay. I've got no problems with it. But I think just the best book I've ever read on feedback is called Radical Candor by Kim Scott. And her thesis there is basically just be kind, be loving, be straight up. Don't sugarcoat it. Just say, hey, look, when you said this cue, I looked around the room. No one knew what the fuck you were talking about. You use this cue instead, right? Just be straight up. Just don't make a big deal of it, and just give them it with love, but without sugarcoating it. Up, light, and direct is the motto I tell myself before I have these conversations. So, yeah, I hope you found that valuable, and I hope you implement, whichever parts of it you find, resonate most with you. Is there anything else that you want to touch on before we finish?
No, I'm all right. Yeah, so I think it's okay. No, it's been a good chat. Is there anything you wanted to touch on, like UK markets or anything like that, Raph? Anything you want to, or you sort of got that, or?
Well, yeah, I'm interested to know your view, because you said you've recently been in Australia. You run a couple of studios there in Surrey. You're opening a third one. You've got Group Reformer over there, which is fantastic. I'm excited. There's Group Reformer in the UK. So if you could give me like a quick rundown of what you see as the differences or similarities between the Australian and the UK sort of reformer scene, that'd be great.
Okay. From what I can gather, I could be wrong. I could. So say in Australia, very cookie cutter from the looks of it. From when I went over there, very streamlined. Lots of franchises starting to pop up. We're getting a few of the Australian franchises are coming over here now. So we're getting Australian franchises coming over, looking in the UK market. And predominantly in the UK, there's a couple of chains, but they've sort of been localised to a certain area. Someone probably similar to myself is there, just little limited companies starting to grow. They get into an area, they know it works, and they're starting to grow in that area. There's no global, not international kind of, KX or whatnot over here in that terms. Like there's those franchise studios across the board. So we're mostly little independent businesses, doing a few different things: classical reformer, dynamic reformer. Most people don't really understand the distinction. It's getting more streamlined now. It's been very popular up in London. Like there's some big studios doing it up in London that are locking down the London area. And then I guess that's where I came into play a little bit. Most of the people, if I was to open one up in the middle of the Midlands or whatnot, people wouldn't necessarily know what it is. They wouldn't understand that price point. We've been successful because people were training up in London. They'd heard of it. They got the price point. They understood why the price point was there. They weren't coming in and going, oh, geez, why is it so expensive? But the UK is going differently now, where they're coming into the big leisure centres that David Lloyd's are putting them in now. I noticed in Australia that a few gyms just had them in as part of gym membership. You could train as much as you want in those gyms under reform. I couldn't get my head around it. I was just like, well, where is this going? That you could go in to a gym, not even a particularly expensive gym, and get free reformer classes. And I'm like, unlimited? Yeah, come as much as you want. I just, I really struggle with that because it's so different over here. The David Lloyd's over here, they are putting them in. I think there's a few other big gyms that are putting them in the leisure centres, and it is an additional cost on top of the gym membership. So they're offering training as well, teacher training. I've had instructors that work at those studios, and they say it's a bit harder because they've constantly got this different flow of people coming into the studio, so they never know who they're going to get. They've always got that sort of starting from the basics. They've got that really big disparity in the classes and skill level. And I think all instructors would know, it's a lot easier to teach a group of people when you say, right, hey guys, we're doing legs in loops, and every ring next thing you know, everyone's sticking their legs up in the air in the straps. Where you've got one person who wants to do class, they've done 20 sessions, and then you've got someone who's new to the class and you're blocking the class. And I think that's what they're like teaching, but that will change. It's still very new. So you've got the franchises coming out over here now, the more cookie cutter operations where you've got me asking these questions about creating continuity. That is a warning from me thinking, well, yeah, hang on, I've got to level up. I've got to start to create my own thing here, my own brand, which is strong and solid. It's proven. It's different. It is very different, but it is, if it goes in the same direction as Australia, I'm not sure. Possibly. And everyone's looking to bring better reformer as well.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And what I saw in Australia is, when you refer to cookie cutter, I think what you mean is this sort of 10 to 14 reformers in a single room doing sort of high intensity dynamic reformer with kind of, punchy music. And so that model really, over the last decade and a bit, since 2010 when the first KX opened, or actually, our studio opened in Melbourne in 2007, we've seen a whole bunch of different models open, and this is the model that has survived. Like it's been a very Darwinian experiment here in Australia, and lots of different size, bigger, smaller, independent, different styles, everything opened up, but all the other ones ended up dying off, and this model has survived. This is the survival of the fittest. It's that sort of 10 to 14 reformers in a room, high intensity dynamic reformer. That is all. It's cookie cutter because all the other ones are dead, because this model works best. So that's what we've seen here in Australia.
What ones do you think have died then, Raph? Like, what do you mean?
Well, At both ends of the spectrum. So when I opened my studio here in Melbourne in 2007, it was massive. We had 20 reformers in one room. We had 32 spaces in our yoga studio. We had a double small group studio, so we could fit like 2 4-on-1 semi-private groups at the same time. 2 Cadillacs, 2 chairs, 2 bales, 2 reformers, 2 wall units, all the rest of it. So that worked really well for a few years, but then these other competitors came in underneath us, and we started to struggle against these like smaller 10-bed reformer studios around the corner because they had a much lower cost base, right? They didn't have receptionists and all the rest of it. We had all of this extra overhead. And then at the other end of the spectrum, the businesses that didn't work were, and luckily, my business did work, and I sold out. It was doing quite well when I sold out. Subsequently, my partners ran it into the ground. But at the other end of the spectrum, the little kind of 1 or 2 person shows where it's kind of like, I don't know, like maybe just a tiny little room with a couple of bits of equipment in it, or maybe it's a slightly bigger room with a few assorted bits of equipment, and instructors kind of rent space in the room and come and teach their own client roster in there. Like all of these kind of little, what was the standard kind of suburban model of a little sort of boutique Pilates studio. I mean, they kind of still exist, but they're just the tiny, tiny minority around the edges now. Whereas 20 years ago they were the standard, in the industry. So I think just this sort of 10 to 14 reformers in a room has just proven just to be the viral winner, of the Darwinian experiment here.
Yeah, no, I get it. And I think that's the kind of, if you get your area right as well, like getting the area right, I think that's really important over here as well. Like, and that's the direction, we're going, is to get those 10 beds in too. But then if you pick the area as well, it's got to sustain those beds as well. I think you bang on, and I think that's where it'll go, because there are like these little beds where the instructor will have 4 reformer beds. And I think that's the kind of thing I'll probably end up doing in 10 years in the middle of nowhere where nobody's ever heard of reformer. I'll open up my little shop and I'll have my 4 beds in there. I'll close it for summer, and once I kind of cash in or get out, when hopefully the going's good, like you did, I'll hopefully set up my own little studio where I can sort of close the doors as and when I want. Don't have the stresses or anything. Do what I want on my terms a little bit more. But yeah, there are a few of those, dotted around in the UK, and I think they're in the areas where it is a labour of love. Someone's been an instructor, they've got themselves good rent, and they put the beds up, and people are travelling for it as well. What are your viewpoints on all these gyms then, opening up and banging in 10, 20 reformers and charging nothing for it? Like, where do you think that's a threat, like over here? Like,
oh no, I think it's fantastic. We when we were in the city, there were 2 open up near us. One was called Elixir, which was a specialist kind of mind body health club. One was Virgin Active. Virgin Active opened up, it's Richard Branson's chain. They put in, I think, like 28 reformers or something in there, something ridiculous. Oh, wow. And it's free with the membership. Do as many classes as you want. This is like a block and a half from our studio. We didn't see a dip in our membership at all. And I think there's two reasons for that. One is, like you say, at the gym, inherently, the gym, like Virgin Active must have like 15, 20,000 members, right? Whereas our studio had like 250 members, right? So you literally know everyone's face and everyone's name, and you know everyone's sore knee and everyone's doesn't like doing splits or whatever, like all, which reformer they prefer and all the rest of it. Whereas at Virgin Active, it's just not possible. You've got 15,000 members. They're just in and out like a revolving door. And so you're teaching 20 people, 25 people in a class, which I don't have a problem with. I think that's great. But it just means that you can't get to know people as well, right? And so you've always got that problem of like there's someone it's their very first class. Every class there's always like 5 people, it's their first class. And there's that person who's more advanced, and there's that person who's, thinks it's like a weight machine or whatever. And so it's hard to deliver the same level of quality of experience just by the nature of the beast, right? Just because you've got that massive amount of members and a massive diversity of people, drifting in and out, and it's much more casual in terms of who attends. And the second thing is because, all right, you've got 15,000 members, you've got 25 reformer beds, you've got 50 classes a week, you say you can come to as many classes as you want. Guess what? You can't, because they're always booked out, right? Because you've got 15,000 members and this is the premium class, right? So you get like 100, 200 people, right, who book out all of the sessions, right? And the other 14,800 can't get in. So I think it's a great thing that they can sell. I think it's fantastic because it brings reformer to a wider audience, and people are like, oh, it's in Virgin Active, it must be cool, right? Must be mainstream, it must be, like normal. And then they see, but I can't get into the classes, right? And then they see, oh, there's Jeff's place across the road. Maybe I'll give that one a go. Oh, this is awesome. Maybe I'll give up my Virgin Active membership, So I think it works. I think it works to introduce people to reformer. And I'm sure, you probably lose one or two members over the years to, if they're like £20 a week cheaper for the unlimited classes. But I think it swings and roundabouts. You'll get at least as many come over to you because they're like, I joined up there and I couldn't get into a class for 3 months, so I came back.
Yeah. No, I get it. So, and I think that's always been a big emphasis as well. Like, community is quite important. These little small studios, like getting to know the members' names and understanding what makes them tick. Okay, yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, I think we can't, we being small businesses, we can't compete with the big gym chains. We can't compete with them on price because they've got economies of scale that we just can't have. They can buy... Yeah. They buy 1,000 reformer machines at a time. We can't compete on, with that. We can't compete with them on like the fit out. Like, they've just got £1 million machines and the swimming pool and all of the rest of it. And there's no way we can compete on that. So we have to compete on being more bespoke, more boutique, more artisanal. Okay. And we can compete on that. They can't compete on that. That's where we can beat them, right? We have to be more bespoke and more artisanal, I think, and charge a higher price accordingly.
Yeah, well, that's what we were very mindful of our price point as well. We're not expensive, and the price, funnily enough, is coming down over here in terms of reformer, where it used to be, £30-35 a session, where it is, people are expecting it to come. I guess there's more competition now. There's more studios coming up. There's more beds in the studios that are opening up. So the price in turn is coming down a little bit, so it is getting your price point right as well. But no, okay, that's good. I like that. That's awesome.
Well, it's normalised here. I think the price of between $22 and $25 a session. That's Australian dollars, so that's probably like £15 or thereabouts, a bit less.
So we're £19, so we sell a 10-pack for $190, and that's our biggest selling. So it's about £19 a session. We're cheap. We're not an expensive studio, I would think. Like, you can buy a 20-pack, brings it down. We got a few little memberships which can bring it down to about £16 a session, that type of thing. But, we pay, I think, a lot more in rent and rates and council tax, all that type of thing. Like, I had to look at, from a business point of view, just getting your numbers right. It's a little bit harder over here. There's just not as much space to get these. When you're putting 15 beds in the high street on a studio, you're talking epic. Like, they've just increased the business rates over here. All the gyms have been hit massively with this business rate increase. There's a gym down the road from us. They were paying $100,000 in business rates a year. Big gym, doubled overnight, $200,000, just $100,000 wiped off your bottom line overnight. So yeah, your business is over here. I remember going up to Queensland. Everything's just so big. Rents are so cheap. Space is so cheap. Over here, it's not so much. But I think, I would struggle if I brought my prices down any more and we're cheap to really make any kind of reasonable money from the place.
And how many beds have you got in?
We've got 7 in both studios, so 7, and one's in the PT studio. So, and the next one will have 10 to 12.
Great. Well, the first thing I would do Monday morning if I was you is knock out the wall between the PT studio and see how many reformers I can squeeze in that one big room.
Yeah, we could squeeze another 1 or 2 in our Godalming one, and that's been on the cards. We're just about to invest in another reformer, so we can squeeze it in. We might just have to be a little bit more clever in our spacing.
£19 a session times 30 sessions a week times 48 weeks a year is £27,360 a year per reformer. 27,000. That's all bottom line because you're already paid your fixed costs. So every extra reform you put in that studio, assuming you can fill the classes, is 28,000 or £27,500 a year.
Yeah, no, they pay for themselves. No, I've got my calculator out because I've tapped those numbers out. It's like, oh, yeah. No, we're about to get enough money. I think too, like we're hoarding all our money at the moment as well for the next studio. So you get to a certain, like we've gone pretty quick. We've opened 2 studios in 2 years, about to open our 3rd. And we've gone down looking at the investment path and all that. And we've had potential with investment, but it's letting go as well. It's a hard thing for me. So it's trying to juggle which is the best direction to go, or just try and beg, borrow, and grab as much money as you possibly can from all your available resources, and go and try and retain it all yourself, which is probably the short-sighted way of looking at it. But yeah. Anyway.
No, I think there's both sides to it. I mean, I'm very glad I'm the sole owner of my business. I own 100%. But I know friends who have franchised their businesses and they love it. They're so glad they don't have to worry about, all those other franchises. They just make the rules and people follow them. So, I think it's personal preference. There's no right or wrong to it.
And that's, you're exactly right. And like, it is personal preference. I know me, and I've been working solo for so long now, and it would be hard to all of a sudden go, oh, well, I just took that money out and justify that to somebody. And, it would be hard to let go.
And when you have a take on investment, you're responsible to that person. Like you owe them money and you owe them a return, and you owe them, insight into what you're doing to produce that return.
No, definitely. And I don't know if I'm there yet. Obstinate person at times.
Great to talk with you, Jeff.
Cool. Likewise. Excellent. No, it's been brilliant. Thank you.